know, it's different front face tonight, that's exciting. Remember, we do have
Oh, I'm John.
a resource
I'm
page
John.
set up now, you
Brian.
guys. Anybody who, like any of our presenters who bring PowerPoint stuff, we post all of that.
You're the
up there
wife that
for
gets
you.
represented. Your
So you
wife
guys
is,
can feel
yeah,
free to log on
she's
to
the
that
female.
and use those
Nice.
resources. We're also taping some of these, and we'll be putting the video up, so you guys will be able to relive this night as many times over as you would like to.
Yeah, like
Our last session will be Wednesday, April 3rd. How to have $1 million and look like $1 million. You are not going to want to miss that one. And investing in the power of compound interest and dress for success. That's what next week is all, or next session is all about. So you guys will want to be here for that for sure. Our seniors last supper is Wednesday, April 10th in Ribbon Lobby at 7. We actually did the taste test for this today. Yeah, that's a real thing. And it was awesome. So you guys are seriously going to want to be there. Bring your friends. For every one of these sessions that you guys have attended, it's $5 off the cost. And next session, you get double points, like double stamp points. So you'll get $10 off if you come just to the last session. So, awesome, right? We're excited about it.
Next time.
Yeah, so bring your friends. You guys all have the passports. If you don't have one, pick one up at the end. We can stamp it for you. If you forgot yours, we can give you another one. And if you want some more information about like the seniors last supper and stuff, there's a little insert that's in the passport that'll give you some more information.
You haven't gone there yet.
And then tonight, we have 4 great panelists that are going to speak to you. But before that,
I took somebody out
I want to show you something that I think you're really going to enjoy.
It was only my second time ever to be there, though. Really? Never went there. Just
Good evening, everybody. Derek, Jake, everyone. I got an announcement to make, and I got my friends here to help me out. Guys, hit it. Shoot-ba-doo-doo, shoot-ba-doo-doo. I am quitting this job. I'm leaving.
Just in case you guys are wondering how to move from job to job, that's actually not it.
that was the
But, you know, just in case you need a little bit of insight. So,
burn those
Jerry
bridges.
Fox, what? Oh, that's Mark Sipka's brother. For those of you that know Mark. Yeah, I know, everybody's, yeah, we know,
Phil.
figures. So Jerry Fox is going to come up, he's going to introduce our speakers and get us
He
rolling
was
for
at
this
T-Rock's
evening.
Red Weddings. Would you recognize him?
That's awesome.
All right. How many of you have been here for all 3 sessions? How many multiple attended? Very good.
Yeah,
Very
Jeepers.
good. Yeah, Ben's been here for all 3 as well. As you heard tonight, next week, if you've got any friends that are especially graduating seniors, this Last Supper idea I think is great because it's going to be a chance for the people you came in with to kind of have a last great time where you can look across and see everybody that's there prior to graduation. You want to be there. It's going to be a neat event. And so I hope, there you go. All right. Scare me. You no longer get to make shadow
Score.
comments.
All right, I can scoot over again.
But you do want to be there for that.
That was not missing.
I
I got
think,
you.
let's see, Paul, I never had you in class, did I?
No, not smart enough.
And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, probably not. But I think everybody else here, did I have you in class or did I think so. I know
I just
John, I never had you in
No,
class.
I just try to keep up with you in the weight room. That's what I try to do.
He took the personal financial planning class as a private tutorial. Every day that I was over in the wellness center, he would meet me over there and ask me every question. And so we sort of did that over a 4-year period.
You had my wife in class, but
And
I
I
know.
had Sarah Graber,
I know her
Steve's
home
wife, in class. Okay. Well, let me introduce these folks to you, and then I'm going to make it a little interactive. I'm going to give each of them time to focus on one aspect of what they have to talk about, but they've got a lot of things that kind of cross over, and so I hope you'll interrupt each other or nudge each other every now and then, or Jill, put your hand over Ryan's mouth, whatever's necessary, so that you can get a word in as well. Ryan and Jill, Carol, down here on the end. You introduce yourself a little better. You're in Greenwood now, right? Or no, that's
all right. That's
your
fine.
church is in Greenwood. You live in
You're okay.
Indianapolis. All right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, our church is in Indianapolis too, but that's
Oh.
you're all right. You're fine.
Okay. All right.
We're in Southeast Indianapolis. Some of you guys probably been up here in Anderson. You hang out on the north side. South side's way better, a lot cooler, more friendly people. And so we're down there. We started a church, had our first service in October, and been going strong since. And my wife, you want to introduce yourself?
I work for a consulting firm, and I work from home. I worked from home with this position for about 4.5 years, so that's a nice benefit.
Now, your church is a little non-traditional. Why don't you give a little bit on that right up front here?
Sure. When I was in high school and youth group, had a lot of friends that were part of our youth group, and after college and got into other ministry and pastoring churches, found out a lot of our friends stopped going to church, and so we wanted to create somewhere where those people could come back and find a place to connect. You guys probably heard of David Kinnaman, who spoke in chapel a few weeks or a couple months ago or something, and
2 weeks ago.
David wrote a book called You Lost Me, which is really that idea of people who they feel like the church has kind of lost them, and they've kind of felt lost from it and don't really connect with it anymore. And so that's our audience and what we're trying to connect with. And so first place we met was in a brew house bar kind of place, and kind of did that. Continue to have opportunities like that in non-traditional places to connect with, and adopted a school. And we try to get out from defining church on Sunday as much as we possibly can to help people to see that. So.
All right, we're going to talk with them a little bit more about several aspects of what they've learned in the process of this, but particularly you've lived in several different communities now and tried to make your way in that, and then also helping people find community in a new church setting, some of those. So we're going to ask them about a couple of those things. Next to them is Paul Muma. How many of you heard Paul in chapel? He spoke last year in chapel. You probably heard him then. And anybody make the drive across to their church occasionally? A few folks, all right. I thought I saw a few hands and people greeting him as you came in. Paul, tell us a little bit about where you're at.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm from Illinois originally, came to Anderson as a transfer student, graduated in '97, and then I worked here for 3 years as a college admissions counselor. In fact, Phil Sipka, the guy in the video, was one of my students, so always cool to see Phil. But I met my wife Jenny here, Jenny Recker, nursing student, cross-country track athlete. We went to Michigan for 5 years. We were in Kentucky for 3, and now in Noblesville at Genesis Church for 4.5 years. And we love it, and we love the students that come over too, and it just floors us, the AU students that come over every week. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great.
That's
And he's going to talk about a number of aspects as well in some of those things. Let's get these other folks, make sure you know who they are. Anybody recognize this guy from about Christmas time when you were watching TV to see what was on sale and where?
Woo, Walmart!
This is the Walmart guy. If you've seen the commercials with, they take the people all through the store and how much did they save, and they're all so excited. This is the guy.
I'll sign your receipt afterwards, okay?
John Bausman. John Bausman is a graduate of both our undergrad and our residential MBA, was a part of that program out at the flagship as well. Tell us a little bit about your path.
Sure. I originally went to AU and added a marketing major because I wanted to do acting, and I heard that failed actors go into sales and marketing. So I was like, awesome, backup plan. So that's actually how I got started. Now I'm a consultant, so yay, consultant. And I actually am a digital consultant, so I manage a bunch of delivery to some large clients, and then my subject matter expertise is social media. So anything social, typically they come to me on. And then for fun, and on the side, I do talent work, which is acting, modeling, hosting, that type of stuff. To which the one that Dr. Fox was referencing, I was the Walmart guy for this region of the country, so did all the commercials for that. I've done some fun stuff, was on Parks and Recreation, and then I also do stuff for Real Scene TV here in Indianapolis.
On the end here is Steve Davis, and he is the attorney in our midst. And you know, if you laid all the attorneys in the world end to end, we'd all be better off because they'd be down and out of our way. But no, Steve was a political science major. Do I remember right? When you were here on campus?
Marketing, because I heard that failed politicians go into
Go
marketing.
to marketing.
I like it.
Perfect. But we all thought that when Steve was here, he was going to be the next governor of Indiana. He just was one of those kind of guys that could rally a room and get things going. His wife, Sarah Graber, I did have in class. Was she a marketing major also?
Yes,
Okay. All right. So that's where you met her?
it is.
It's good to go to marketing class.
Dr. Weiss says that his greatest accomplishment in his career is that he had me for principles of selling, and I convinced Sarah Graber to marry me. So he's probably right.
A winner. All right, right there. Steve's dad, Will Davis, used to help our classes out with all kinds of things. Started and ran and grew several companies in central Indiana, and so we were always anxious to get him in front of our students. So we knew Steve before he was even an AU student, or knew of him through his dad helping us out. And we were thrilled when he and Sarah both came through school here. Give us a little bit about your path since then.
So I am an attorney. I graduated from here in 2001 and went to IU Bloomington for law school. And then I practiced at a firm in Indianapolis for a couple years before having an opportunity to go in-house at a seatbelt manufacturer in Westfield, and I've been there ever since. So I work with the legal and HR teams there.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to start with John for a reason that kind of bridges us to some of where we've been already, and then kind of take it into a couple other aspects of moving out of life after AU, and aspects that these folks, we've asked them to kind of address a couple things up front, but I also know that every one of them has got some life lessons. In fact, Ryan and Jill, I was asking them out there, and they said, well, we can tell everybody what not to do your first few years out of school and save them a lot of time and trouble. And I think everybody up here could probably do some of that. But one of the things that I keep hearing, teaching the personal financial planning class, and then even as we've met in our previous times, one of the top concerns of a lot of students coming out of school is, I had to borrow some money to get my education. And I'm starting in the basement, and I got to keep digging until I can peer over the top and hopefully start life. You graduated with a degree, an undergrad degree, and then added on to that a master's degree.
Yep.
And so how much money did you owe when we finally gave you that second diploma here?
I was fortunate to only have 42 grand. I say only because I know a lot of other people that had it even worse. But I got to that point because Ben's brother, Joe, fantastic guy. He was my admissions counselor. So I had some help with scholarship money, and my parents made some sacrifices, but ultimately walked out with 42 grand of debt.
Okay. And your parents were very supportive of higher education, wanted to, but based on their career paths and things they did, your family whole situation was such that I was going to have to borrow some money to get through school. And that is a common story for a lot of our students. All right, so $42,000, that's like a home mortgage and you don't have a home.
Right, exactly. So I kind of,
what'd you do?
Well, I actually, before I graduated from AU, I saw an advertisement for kind of a one-on-one night session with Dr. Fox over here. And I went there and literally just started taking notes. And went into grad school very budget-minded, very budget-conscious. And I would actually still get together with Dr. Fox. We got together at the Nile and a couple other places, and I'm like, okay, here's my budget. What do you think?
I was looking for a free meal.
I really was. Yeah, I was looking for a free meal and free consulting. And so literally walked out of college and grad school. Candidly, the last couple of years, I had a job, my first big boy job, got fired from that. That's always good. I didn't leave this cool, like sing a song or anything like that. Started.
They sang to you.
Yeah, they sang like na 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 na. It wasn't very nice. And then I actually went as an independent consultant, and Kevin Stewart actually worked with me for a summer, and that ended up bombing as well. And now I'm at where I'm at. So I say all that to say that it wasn't like I walked out of school and I had a ton of money. I honestly had crazy job stuff and just had to figure out a way to make it work.
But you did find a way to make it work because right now you don't have any of that debt.
No, I
And
fortunately
you
wrote
did
my
debt-free for a little while.
Yeah, I wrote my last check to Nelnet a little over a year ago. So paid off that 42 grand. Thanks. Yeah, it feels awesome. I was about 2.5, maybe 3 years out of grad school. Paid it off, and I honestly did that through making a lot of sacrifices. I worked for a company in Anderson, and I lived at home with my parents.
In fact, who's got a big pop? No? Rickers? This is the guy that sold them to everybody.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
created the marketing plan.
Yeah, moving from gas stations to Walmart, guys. That's my career goal right there. It's working. So worked for them, and honestly moved in with my parents on the south side of Indianapolis. What?
Yeah.
And it is a lot cheaper down there. And so lived with them and just
Awesome.
commuted every day for an hour up, hour back. And then I would couch bum whenever I could off of people here in Anderson. Did that for a couple months. Family heard about this in Anderson. I didn't even know them. And they end up saying, hey, come over for dinner so we can make sure you're not a creepo. And then asked like, hey, do you want to end up living for us for a little while? So I did. Then I lived with a friend at his apartment in Noblesville for a couple months. Then lived up here in Anderson on a month-to-month rent. Then moved back in my parents after I got fired and lived with them until I moved into where I'm at now. So all that to say, that is not sexy in any way, shape, or form, right? Like, I did not have a permanent address for more than 3 months, okay?
And on top of this, you're driving a great car.
Yeah, absolutely. I bought this car for peanuts. I mean, the paint was chipped off. I had no AC. I mean, this car had 270-something thousand miles on it. And I just mooched for all I could get. And then when that car just crapped out, I bought a car at a car auction. Still have it now. Just so you know, too, the windows are falling down. I have poles keeping them up. I mean, it is as like jerry-rig as it gets, all because I don't want to spend the money on the car. There are other things that I want to do that I have aspirations for, and having a nice, fancy car right now is not one of them.
Well, part of why John is my poster boy for getting out of debt, and I love his story, is if you've ever listened to Dave Ramsey, his key line is live like nobody else so that you can live like nobody else. And John looked around, and a lot of his friends are doing things he would have loved to have done. You know, they're spending money to do this and doing all kinds of things, and a lot of times putting it on the credit card, getting further into debt. And John said, I'm not going to live like that, you know, because I've got bigger dreams for my future. So I'm going to find a way to make this work. And if it's sleeping on somebody's couch, if it's taking the kindness of strangers that say, look, you're driving an hour each way, just stay at our house and do that until you can kind of find something better. We got space, we'd love to have you. He did those kinds of things for a while, and I just think that's a great story. Less than 3 years, paying off $42,000 of debt, you know, that's worth celebrating. All right, now, in doing that, though, you were kind of, as you said, a man with no address, all over the place. Hard to really build community, find a home church where you plug in, do all those kinds of things. Why don't you start us on that path, and then let's talk to some other people about one of the most important decisions that we can make is where am I going to be a part of a community? And if you're a person of faith, where do I find a faith community that I can contribute to at the same time grow as I'm making this real transition in my life? So start us on that, John. Let's get these other folks involved.
So that's actually, for me, something that's been very difficult. So there's pros and cons to my decisions, and I just had to outweigh them and be like, okay, this is the pro for me right now, kind of a cost-benefit analysis. And that lifestyle did not lend me to have much of a community, and it's something that I have struggled with, and something that I have still had to seek out and kind of figure out a way to end up connecting. Now that I have a bit more of a permanent address, that does help. So there are some things, just so you guys know, that I would not sacrifice. I kind of have my limits. One of those is I would honestly say I would never buy overalls or wear overalls. I consider them like the denim onesie. So, like, there are some things that I would not do. I would be totally fine eating beans and rice, but if I found overalls and they were on trend and on sale, I still wouldn't buy them. So, like, I'm just encouraging you to know your thresholds, know your limits, so you know.
I know what you're getting as a gift. So.
Yeah, absolutely. A pair of
Well,
overalls.
all right. I'm going to pull in any of the rest of you on this where you'd like to jump in on some of the things that John's talked about. And the debt picture, the finding the community, and finding a place where you can plug in.
You know, as he was talking, the thing that I was thinking about was our stupid mistakes. And if there's anything that I feel like we can contribute to the conversation is the stupidity that we had early on. And it's so easy when you get out that you want to look good to people who you really don't care about what they think about you. And so when we got out, you know, there was a guy that worked at our church that had a car place, and we thought, well, we better go buy a car from him. You know, that'll make him happy that we bought a car. And so we had payments on a Dodge Neon. How stupid is that? I mean, it's not even a good car, right? And you get what you deserve out of that, because as soon as we paid it off, we put the last check on it, the transmission exploded. I mean, that's just how that kind of stuff works. And then we bought a couch, I think, on some kind of 6-month, same as cash, gets you some interest on that kind of deal. And we just did all that stupid stuff until we got to the point that I wish we would have said it earlier was, I don't want to live like this. And we got into that too late. And so we had to go back and say, okay, how can we change this? So that's when we accepted the 1987 Cutlass Sierra, that you could put your foot through the door.
Oh,
See,
yeah, that's a good
if you can put
feature.
your foot
Yeah.
through, and the wetness on the
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
it's always wet.
And if
Yeah.
it was
rain.
cold,
It's like the
doors
Flintstone-mobile,
didn't
right?
close,
Yeah,
so you turn the corner
so if you
and
turn
they
the corner,
open.
you'd have to hold the door as you turn the corner.
I like this car.
That was an awesome, and the you know, in the top, and we would still have that car if we didn't have a daughter, but I didn't feel safe. I like Emily too much. I wasn't going to put her in the back seat of that car.
Yeah,
But
one hard turn and you
she's
know.
out the door, and that's the end of that.
But he went to auctions. Both of the cars that we have now are from auctions
Yep.
that we paid cash for. So
Yeah.
I think we still have a lot of things to work out, but I think a car is a really easy thing to sacrifice early on, and even for the rest of your life. I mean, our cars are fine, but we're not gonna. I was talking with my sister. Her husband's a doctor, and they're looking to do a lease.
Yeah.
And I just that makes me cringe a lot. And so I think a car though is really a place that you can sacrifice for even just a little, and then still save up your money, and you can trade up and you can get something that's decent, and you don't have that $400 whatever coming out of your pocket every month. So.
There's a great video I remember that it was Dave Ramsey's team put together a few years ago, and it was just the way it was created was perfect, and it had, and I don't know if you remember this, guys, or not, but it had like retire with $1 million and have a great car or something like that was the idea behind it.
You just saw this a week ago, Jacob. We show again. It's drive-free cars.
Drive-free cars, yeah,
Entire rate.
and and it's awesome because they showed this really crappy car, and then you keep making payments yourself
Yeah.
instead of payments to somebody else. You take that money, you turn in the car, you take the money you've got, and you get a better car. That's not really much better. So you go from a $500 car to a $1,000 car, and then you kind of keep up in it, and you pay cash. I mean, we have some friends that I was talking to last night, and I said, they had no idea, but I said, the 2 cars in my garage I've been debt-free on for 4 or 5 years or whatever it's been, and I'm like, I don't even know what it would be like to have a car payment anymore, and it hinders your ability to do so many things.
Well,
And
one quick warning to you seniors is as soon as your name is printed in a newspaper or someplace on a list that you are a college graduate or soon to be, every car dealer will send you something in the mail. They can find you now easily with the internet, and they'll find it and they'll say, listen, hey, to congratulate you, we've got $1,000 off on a new car from you. Right? And it sounds wonderful. And if they can get you in the door, they'll say, how much could you afford monthly payments? Whatever number you tell them, they can sell you a car for that. Now, it means you'll be paying on it for 7 or 8 years, which means at no time it'll depreciate faster than you can pay it off. So at no time while you're paying it off could you sell it for enough to cover the loan. And that is not the way you want to live. And that's part of what I'm hearing these folks say as well. All right, this isn't all about cars tonight. We had that discussion a couple weeks ago. Let's talk about community again, though, and finding that. Paul, jump in on this.
Yeah. And I want to add to it real quick, and then I'll move on. But, you know, for my wife and I, we made a commitment, let's get our debt paid off. And fortunately, she didn't have any college debt. I did, but we made a commitment. We paid it off the first year that we were married. And I would just add to it, not so much about even car choices, but options that it opens up for the future. I mean, we just made a decision early on when we were married that we would like to at least have the choice of Jenny staying home one day. And so we lived off of one income for the 5-6 years before we had our first child, even though we both had jobs, paid off debt, put money away, and it's created options for us now to where my wife she made a choice to stay home. We've made a choice together, and she's been home now for 10 years, and she chooses to do that. And she's got a great degree, and she was a phenomenal nurse, and she could go back and do that one day, but just the importance of options.
And it's almost fun seeing if we do this and put this money away instead of blowing it on quick things right
Yeah.
now, how creative can we get to still have a great time? And I'll bet you had a great time.
You bet, absolutely. Now, on the community side of things, so we lived here in the Anderson community for the first few years after college, and I think one of the probably, if we had to go back and do it over again, we would have worked, because I wasn't in ministry at the time, even though we knew that was probably a part of our future. We didn't really get planted in a church. Now, Jenny was working the third shift. I was working here at AU and traveling, and so our schedule was all over the place. And so we spent the first few years just kind of bouncing in and out of a lot of churches around the Anderson community. And as I look back on those years, I think especially for my wife and working third shift, I mean, that can really mess with you too, as you can imagine. I mean, we were lonely people, and we had very few relationships. And to go from college, where you had people around you all the time and friends around you all the time, to seeing everyone leave, and well, we chose to stay here. We were very lonely until we went into full-time ministry, and then you kind of have to get involved with the church that you go to. I mean, it's kind of a part of the gig. But, you know, it was life-giving at the same time, too. Not only that, well, it was another job, but it was life-giving in building relationships with people, because you're just not made to do life alone. And the value of being a part of a church community was just really important to our marriage at the time.
Steve, jump in on that.
So I've done a church search. We moved from Bloomington to Westfield in, I guess, 2005 and 2004. And so we did a 6-month church search. And there are dozens of great churches. Really, no matter where you live, you're in close proximity to a lot of great churches. And so when we did this search, one of the challenges you find is you go, you hear a good message or a bad message, you get good music or bad music, you have good coffee or bad coffee, you know, all those things you'll get. But, you know, I said to Sarah on the way to the church we ended up at, I said, it's not fair. We're bouncing from church to church. What I want to know is, what do they believe on baptism and communion? Not that that's like a deal breaker, but I want to know that they've thought through the process. And we ended up getting to this church. They were in between series, and the pastor said, hey, we're in between series this morning. We're going to talk about a couple values. We're going to talk about baptism and communion. I got this elbow in my side, you know. And so we stayed, but I guess looking back, there are so many great churches that when you get to this point, and when it's time for you to wonder, what community am I going to spend a lot of time with, not just on Sundays, but in groups together and doing life together, I just say go and be generous. You know, expect great things, because if you go and say, I wonder what's wrong with this church, you will find 100 things, because churches are full of people and we all got issues. So go and expect good things, and don't look for all the bad things right off the bat. Otherwise, you'll never find, you will not find a perfect church. These guys are great, and they will admit their churches aren't perfect. So when it comes time to do that, because you need a community, you need people to be in life with, go and expect good things and find a great place, and you will. That would be a better attitude had I gone about it differently than the last time.
I want to bring in one other element of this and get you on this to get started, and then we'll kind of blend it back in with this. One of the reasons we asked Steve to get here and talk about this, Steve was a type A, hard-charging kind of guy. You know, getting with, if you are an Indiana resident and you know the name of any law firm in the state, you know Ice Miller. One of the biggest, best-known firms, and he was in there doing great stuff. But that takes a lot of time. If you are the new guy and you're trying to stand out and really trying to move forward in your career, And that can really take a lot of your focus. You've got a beautiful wife at home. You've got somebody you ought to be spending some time with. And I don't even know about do you have kids at this point?
I have 3.
3. I thought you might show a picture. Okay. All right. But you got a beautiful wife and 3 kids. How do you find the balance? Because these are the years where I can really make a step forward in what I'm trying to do. But do I leave my whole family behind? Where do you find the balance in that?
Confession time, I'm really bad at it. But I have found a couple things as I've been out of law school for 9 years. So, first of all, I don't like the concept of work-life balance, the phrase, because it sounds like work and life are separate or competing in some way. And, you know, a big part of your life is what you do. I mean, it's a big part. Since we got kicked out of the garden, we were told we're going to scratch a living out of the earth, and it was going to be toil. So part of life is toil, but because God is good, we can draw some fulfillment from our job. And so it's important first to have a job that you're a little bit proud of, that you can be happy about doing, that you can do with integrity. Because if you're doing a job that you are not pleased with, if it doesn't align with your values, if you're doing that job, then no matter how little or much time you spend there, you are going to feel out of balance. So if you have a job that you think fits with who you are, that'll help. Second, the life balance is it's work and it's family and it's church and it's hobbies and it's personal time and it's date time and it's all of that has to be part of your equation for balance. And so, I don't know, the first 10 years out of school, you'll get it right for a while and wrong for a while and all those things. But if I would have, when I was in school, written down sort of how I want people to think about me at any time, I don't know, but let's say you think you've made it, whatever that means for you. If you wrote down what you wanted people to think of for you, that you've made it, and then you could refer back to that from time to time, that would be helpful, because you probably wouldn't say, I want people to know that Steve Davis is a workaholic. You know, I want people to know that Steve Davis is a couch potato. I mean, again, there's lots of ways to be out of balance. But if you were to do that, then I think you would say, you know, here are the things that are important to me. And so for me, I work a lot. I always have date night, more than most people, because time with my wife is important. And that means I leave my kids, and my oldest son, who's 7, is like, you guys going on a date again? I'm like, yeah, and it's important. And he says, okay. So date night's important. Vacation is important. No matter what job you get, you're going to be given some vacation. Use it. Don't bank it, because, you know, it doesn't do you any good in a bank. Use your vacation. Be diligent. Be a worker that everybody can rely on and they know when you're going to be in. But book a vacation. Tell everybody in the world you're going on vacation, and then stick to it. And when you're on vacation, get rid of this. And I never get rid of this, and I really should. So work-life balance. It's a constant struggle. But again, it's important to know that you need to have vacation. You need to have a hobby. You need to take time for yourself. You need to make sure that you're involved in the community that you live in, if that's something that's good for you. You know, those are all balance issues for me. I have to do all those things, otherwise I start to feel like I'm out of balance. I'm missing out on something.
All right, we've got 2 people that are leading congregations right now. I grew up in a pastor's home, and my dad never saw one of my Little League baseball games. And he hates that, and I hated it at the time. And when we talk about some of this kind of balance, you don't have set hours, 9 to 5. I know a lot of people think you only work on Sunday. I know differently, and most people that have been around pastors' families know differently as well. But the important thing is your day doesn't start at 9 and end at 5. How do you handle all this? Because everybody wants a piece of your time, and they expect you to be at everything. How do you do it?
Well, I mean, I think Steve really made me feel convicted about date night. He's probably going on a lot more dates than I am, and I don't know how your wife is, but my wife's pretty hot, so I'd like to go on a few more dates.
Date night's
So,
good.
Yeah, right. So Yeah, I think sometimes miserably is how we handle it, but especially with us, I think, starting a church is kind of like starting your own business, and it's, from 7 in the morning until literally you fall asleep. It's the only thing I can think about sometimes, and you're never, and I'm sure it's an existing church, you feel the same pressure, especially when you're the lead guy. You just feel this weight of all this stuff kind of sitting on you, and I think especially in today's world, with social media, and I think this plays into anybody, it's so easy to go to bed and pull out your iPad and get on Twitter and get on Facebook, find out what the world is doing, rather than going to bed
You're laying
and
in bed with this
relaxing.
beautiful woman next to you.
Right,
What's
I have
wrong with
way
you?
better things I could be doing with my time, and I'm sitting, sorry. You start reading it and you're looking at it, and you get into that, and it's not even healthy for you, because anything electronic like that gets your brain working and you can't go to sleep, and it's not a good situation to begin with. So I think it's just so easy to get caught up in that world. And so what I try to do is say, my phone is off at 5, turn it off at 5, and have family time, or whatever you do. If you don't have a family, have time. Just get away from that world. We create ourselves online too often, and that is our persona, and we don't even know who we really are in real life. And it's good to have that place where you get away from that for a period and go to dinner with friends, actually have communication with real people. And sometimes I think you can have weird work hours, that's okay. Just have those blocks where you say, this phone is off. A guy that's a coach of mine, he said, turn your phone on, and at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, listen to your messages, write them down, call people back, turn it off. Pick it up back at noon, check your messages, call people back, turn it off. Back at 5 o'clock, check your messages, call people back, done. Turn it off for the night. And for me, I know that's not a reality in some aspects of people's lives, but for us, it's one thing I want to try to get to. It's on his voice message. He says, hey, if you've reached me, I check my phone at 9, noon, and 5. I'll call you back at those times when I get the opportunity. And it's kind of otherwise
I
too
love
bad.
that.
It's really cool, yeah, it's
That's a good
awesome.
idea.
I had a manager tell me one time, anybody who's always available isn't usually worth talking to when you can reach them. And I think that's true.
pretty good advice.
If they're stopping everything they're in the middle of to talk to you, they're not getting anything significant done. I think that's great. That's a great idea.
This has been a topic that we've talked about really since the beginning of the year, and I even talked about it with my boss. I'm in the position that I'm fortunate. I work full-time, but I work from home. And so that's kind of a unique position, especially since we have our almost 3-year-old who's there with me almost all the time. So while I'm not sending her off to daycare every day, I am not spending every day with her because I'm doing my work. So it makes an interesting twist to the work-home family balance. And that's what we've started talking about a little bit more, that even if I have to take, which fortunate my schedule allows, take a little bit of time during the day. There's nothing wrong with working in the evening after she's in bed if he's working too. So it's about finding those blocks in different times, and it is about leaving your phone at home when you go on vacation or go to the store. I mean, if it's your work phone, which mine is, does someone need to call? I don't answer it anyway, so why do I have to take it and be tempted to check my email? So that's kind of a different world, and I think that once you're in a full-time position, you're gonna find a difference between people that are your age, people that are a little bit older, and then your managers who are, maybe like your parents' age, because everybody works very differently. My boss is just a little bit younger than my mom, and she has only recently learned to turn off the phone because for them it was all new, and we have this, this email all the time, and people have to be able to reach me because that's the expectation. And I think that it's up to this next generation of workforce to reset that expectation, because we don't have to be available all the time.
I'm single, so I don't have anything better to do with my time. The reason why I say that is that there's always like 3 things whenever I talk to AU students that I normally address, because A, I am normally the single person on a panel. B, I'm normally the person who doesn't know what they want to do with their career yet. And so I normally end up kind of giving my advice to people that may fit into that. So I don't know if anyone in this crowd is single or anyone in this crowd is not sure what they want to do. But I balance my work life in preparation for marriage, if that makes sense. So I am very guarded about my time. I work very hard at my job, but I try to not exceed past the actual hours that I should be working, which is totally fine for me. Get in, work hard, and then leave. Because for me, my mindset is that I can't change that switch once I get married. Like saying I do does not suddenly mean like, oh, I can totally go from a 60-hour work week to 40 and make this work. It just doesn't happen like that. So what I end up doing is I don't respond to emails on the weekends. I don't respond to them at night. Because if I do, it sets the expectation that, oh, John's available. So I may look Sunday night and just be like, is there anything I missed for tomorrow? And so I'm like, I need to talk to you immediately. Well, that's fine. In my mind, we'll talk tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock when I make the call. But I am all about setting up for the next stage if that's what you want. So when you get into your jobs after college, typically it's going to be, you're the young pup. So, you know, we're going to, like, when I hear that you're Ice Miller and you're the young guy, that immediately I have the expectation that they're going to be working you, like, really, really hard. And so, yeah, a lot of opportunity. That's a great way of looking at it, a lot of opportunity. So that's at least my advice as a singleton who doesn't have a spouse or a child. But I say that because the last person that I dated was a single mom. So how could I go from a 60-hour work week from like this to this? I mean, I was suddenly in a dating capacity, was like, I was going to karate classes twice a week and I'm doing all these different things. And I had balanced my life enough as a single person where I could do that. And that was very new and very different for me. But that'd be my advice on that one.
I love something you said about setting yourself up for the next, steps. And this has been kind of something that we've been coming back to with a few people over and over and over again. I have a friend that's a single guy, and he didn't get into the industry that he wanted to be in, and he's had kind of this job where he's had this imaginary place that he wants to be someday. And I've been friends with him long enough. I grabbed him and I said, dude, what do you want to do right now to get there? Like, you have to stop focusing on that place. And I think that's what gets us in trouble going after the finances and all of that stuff, is that we get into this, I want it now thing. And we can't begin to see what sacrifice or things it takes and the steps we have to take to get there. We all expect that when we get out of school, we're going to have the great job, we're going to be the man somewhere, we're going to have, the great car, we're going to have a great house. And the fact is, people are willing to mortgage things to make that happen for you. Your time, your money, your family life, whatever it is. You can mortgage and make those things happen. Or you can say, hey, I'm going to find the things it's going to take to make the steps to get there. And then you don't regret all this stuff behind. Or you don't ever end up in that imaginary place and you're not doing anything. I mean, this guy literally is at a place he's miserable because he's always had this grass is greener location in his mind and hasn't taken the steps to get there. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. So. My motivator is actually not me. It's my future wife, Taylor Swift. Just want to put that out there. It's my motivator. But my motivator is my future wife and future kids, hopefully, if that's what God has planned. So when I'm like making these sacrifices now, it's so that like my wife and my kids don't have to, because it's a lot easier when you're by yourself to do the beans and rice thing, right? It's a lot harder when you care about someone else to watch them eat those beans and rice. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of like my mentality. So whether it's my job or whether it's my finances, like I said, the last person I dated was a single mom. I mean, that's a total different scenario going from singleton to potential parenthood where you have all kinds of expenses. I have no idea what situation she's going to be in, like she could end up having a lot of student loan debt too, like I did. And wouldn't it be great if we can end up coming in and be like, cool, let's start out fresh. Let's do that. So I think it's all about what's that motivating factor for you.
In talking with these folks before we came, we tried to anticipate some of the kinds of things that you might be interested in and ask them to share some of their expertise on that. But we may have missed some of that. So let's take a few minutes right now. If you've got something that you wish they had talked about or would still like to hear from them, what is that? Go ahead and ask any questions you've got. Yeah.
I want to know about relocation, like your process of doing that and like what your advice is if you're moving states away.
So, I didn't move states away, but interestingly, several of my best friends here all independently decided to move to California. Sacramento, San Francisco, LA, Truckee. I mean, they all just went out. They've all ended up closer together near San Francisco. But so I can speak to some of the mistakes they made and some of the things they did real well. First of all, the ones that did it well went cheap. So even the ones that had a job said, I don't know the area, I don't know what I'm going to get myself into, I don't know this job's going to last. So first step, I'm going to find a place to live relatively close to public transportation, and I'm going to figure it out for 6 months, and then I'm going to try and maybe make a better step. But from a HR perspective, if you're looking to relocate somewhere else, if you have a job or if you don't have a job, think about all the things that go into moving. I mean, you're going to need a community. You're going to want to find an area that you can live in and have things within walking distance or public transportation, whatever that is. But statistically speaking, in the first 10 years after graduation, you're going to change jobs twice. So you're going to get a job, and then you're going to get another job. Some of you are going to get fired from a job.
You're an overachiever.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Quick, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Within a year and a half. Fantastic.
And so, just words of caution, if you're going to relocate to someplace that has one employer in the county, think real hard about if you're going to keep that job for 2 or 3 years, because if they're the only employer within a half hour and you lose the job, you're going to have to move, and moving's not free. So.
Great question.
But right after college is a great time to relocate, because if you've got nothing keeping you here, I would never encourage someone to leave the great Hoosier State. But in the event you have to, now's a pretty good time.
I would just add too, so my wife, we've moved from Anderson to Michigan to Kentucky to back to Noblesville. And it was just interesting with each move as I was just kind of looking back on it, that moving away from Anderson is like, well, it's just the two of us, we're young, let's go do this, let's move to Michigan. And God was in each of them, and there was a calling, definitely. But then from Michigan to Louisville, it was more of a, hey, here's a really great opportunity at a pretty outstanding church. We got to go there. I mean, so professionally, there was some kind of motivation in that. But then with kids, and our last move 4.5 years ago, it became, where do we want to raise our family? And for us, I'm from Illinois, my wife's from Northern Indiana, and here's the AU story, and it is like, close to AU is the thing that felt most like home for the both of us, and we want to raise our kids in a place like Noblesville. And so it's just interesting at each stage of life, how you start processing a number of different things and thinking about that
Is there
move.
something specific about the move idea that you wanted them to address, or have they hit most of what you're interested in?
I mean, I'm moving, so I was just curious what they thought about it.
Okay.
Anytime you can move with a moving company, go for it. All right?
Purge. As someone who didn't move out of state, but I moved in with people a lot and on frequent basis, just purge, go through your stuff, and honestly get rid of a bunch of stuff. Even if you're a minimalist, you tend to just acquire stuff. It just kind of happens. So purging through your stuff and being like, you know what, I really don't need this. Just get rid of it. Give it to Goodwill, itemize it, deduct it from your taxes. Easiest thing to do.
I would also like to add, I'm sure that the panelists would agree, that you could really use your alumni network as you're moving, finding people in Kentucky or Michigan or wherever you're moving that could start the big community.
You bet.
Other questions? Saw another hand at one point. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I know you guys have said that you paid off debt, but none of you really said how you did that. Besides saving and everything and living up on couches, how did you take the steps and because you said you did it in a year and you said 3, that's crazy. Thinking in my head. So yeah.
Well,
You
I
wanna do
mean,
year one?
we just decided, we were both fortunate enough to have jobs coming out of college, and so we just said, hey, let's just live off of one paycheck. And we continued that practice even after we paid off my student loans. But here's what I would say, we made some poor choices along the way with leasing a car, but now, we're focused on a house payment, and that's all we have left. and we want to pay that puppy off, and we're on a 6-year, 7-year plan to do that. But I mean, for us, I mean, we went through financial peace 3 years ago, and we wish we would have gone through financial peace 14 years ago, because we know we'd be in a completely different place today. So we pay with cash. We don't go out to dinner unless there's cash in the envelope. We don't have cable. Our cars are paid off. We're living within our means. We are thankful for people who give us their kids' hand-me-downs, and we pass those on to our kids as long as we can do that. So, I mean, those are a few probably no-brainers, but the cash thing, man, I mean, that card's dangerous.
Yep. I would say get together with Dr. Jerry Fox over here. And honestly, like, having that budget, if you don't have a plan, it's the whole, like, if you don't have a plan, then you plan to fail. So having the budget and either, going to the envelope system is a great system. For me, I use all of my debit, but I use mint.com to set up everything so that it's all, telling me what to do. One thing that I'll add too, because most of likely you all will end up living with people after you graduate. And one thing I want to put out there too is once you get into a living situation with people, it's kind of like a communal part where your finances do affect one another, right? So like if someone can't pay rent, that does impact you. As a good way to help, I found, has been to kind of have that conversation with your roommates initially and do the envelope system for community stuff. So have a checklist and be like, okay, rent's $250 a month per person, and everyone has their name and has rent next to it. When's it due? Have it written on there. And then be like, okay, well, bills like utilities, things like that, have on there. And then honestly, this is the most innovative thing I found with roommates. Have a petty cash system. Because you will always end up getting, hey, can you pick up toilet paper on the way home? Can you pick up this? What I found was that I was picking all the toilet paper up. And I know I was not using all the toilet paper. So what I end up doing is we decide what are communal items. Paper towels, dishwashing soap, all of that. Okay, what's the estimated cost of that per month? Okay, petty cash fund. Everyone puts in $15 a month cash into this envelope first of the month. If we get something, you put the receipt into the receipt piece so we have a track of where everything goes. The reason why I say that is that, again, I'm always thinking about like the next step. I'm not married, but I know the number one reason for divorce is finances. So the number one reason we're gonna fight in a communal situation is probably money. That or someone like left the dishes in there and you're all ticked that they left the dishes in there and it's because you didn't have dish soap because you didn't have a petty cash fund. So finding ways to have that conversation up front, get everyone buy-on and tell everyone let's have a budget. I don't care if you spend the rest of your money on jelly beans. I just want you to know that rent's $250 on the first of the month and you better be prepared for that. Because those are real life situations. And there's grace and things like that in that too, but having a plan is important.
I want to see your roommate agreement.
I'm telling you what, man.
Sheldon Cooper.
I am so Sheldon Cooper. Like,
Where's your spot?
That's right.
It's just good practice.
I think a really good phrase that we used was at the top of our budget, and having a budget. I mean, because my wallet's a black hole. I'll just spend all day. I don't know where it goes. But if we have a budget and you give every single dollar a name, and then we have a phrase that says contentment pays off debt. Contentment is the best financial word you could ever learn because you're just happy with what you've got. Like, I mean, right now we're in the midst of trying to figure out something with a couch that we want. We've had the same couch for like 10 years, and we're like, you know what? We can move that into this other room and be totally fine with that. And if somebody makes fun of us, that's fine because they're probably broke. And that's okay. And your friends who make fun of you are broke. So laugh at them because they're the ones that'll be broke. So just be content about it. Don't try to be a rock star and just be happy with what you have. So.
And I think you already had a budgeting session maybe, but it's not just about having a budget in theory. It's about actually going back at the end of the month or throughout the month and making sure, especially if you're not just using cash, that you're actually sticking to the budget. And even when you use cash, because we use cash for a lot of things, there's other things we use our debit card for. So you need a system, and ours is a spreadsheet because I kind of like numbers, so I like to put it all in there. But a tool like mint.com is great because it needs to be just more than in theory, because the first few years we were married and out of school, we had a budget. We're like, oh, this is how much cable is, this is how much we think we should spend on groceries, this is how much we think we should spend on this. At the end of, there were a lot of times where it came time and it was like 3 days before payday and I'm like, don't use the debit card anymore. Why? Well, we don't have any money. Why don't we have any money? I don't know, we just don't. And so once we actually got on a budget that we stuck to and reconciled, that was huge.
As a spreadsheet
John
person,
said- oh, I'm sorry.
I was just say, as a spreadsheet person, what I really liked is I took those numbers that I got from Dr. Fox and the Dave Ramsey program, and this is really nerdy, so this is a Sheldon Cooper moment. And I built if-then statements to tell me whenever I put in money, like to know, okay, how much do I have for food and whatnot, it would tell me, are you within the budget range recommended? Are you below? Are you high? Are you in that point? So that as something comes along, like a baby, for instance, you can end up putting that in and be like, okay, all right, is that too high? Is that too low? You know, can I afford to buy like steaks or something like that?
Shows up at the door.
Yeah, it shows at the door. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've seen Dumbo. I know how this works.
The unexpected pregnancy.
Yeah. Tell me it's not a stork.
It's not unexpected.
Well, part of what I'm hoping you're hearing with this, John said money can be the #1 issue that people fight over, but I hope you heard Jill and Ryan say it can be the thing that brings you together closer than anything as well. Because you're saying, what are your priorities? I love you. I want you to be happy. How can we make those things that are most important to you happen? That's what I want us to do. This is what we've got to work with. How do we make sure it works for the things that you want? I mean, there's nothing sexier than that, is there? and it really pulls people together. It is. You know? Look at them laugh. They know I'm telling the truth. It's the idea that I want to find a way to make your most important things happen. That is a wonderful gift to give to each other.
I would say there's another piece to this too. As I was talking to this couple last night, like I realized they were super aggressive